Great. Um, so I'll go ahead and get us started, and then people can trickle in, as they can. So, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kelly Hickler, and I am the co-chair, one of the co-chairs of the APA Community Engagement Interest Group. And with me on the call today, I have Stephanie and Jennifer, who are co-hosts of the Booked on Planning podcast. And I'm curious, how many people, like show of hands or type in the comments, how many of you have heard of Booked on Planning and or are listeners of the Booked on Planning podcast? Okay, Kara. Okay, well, after this, all of you will be subscribing to the Booked on Planning podcast, right? Um, so let me go to the next slide real quick. Okay, introduced myself. My co-chair Chris couldn't make it today, but he's here in spirit, and his company Conveo is powering this podcast today. So thank you to Chris for that. And then here, oh yeah, you guys inserted a slide. Great. It looks great. So I'll turn it over. Wait, I think after this I have the slide about the interest group, right? So why don't you guys self-introduce and then I'll do a little spiel about the interest group and then we'll jump into the topics.
Sure. Stephanie Rouse. I am the co-host of Booked on Planning, and both Jennifer and I are in Nebraska. And so, as the podcast started as a project of the American Planning Association Nebraska chapter, we were looking for ways to help educate and prepare our membership for the AICP exam, knowing and kind of went through a bunch of ideas and then landed on this book interview podcast where in year one we covered all 24 books that are on the recommended reading list for AICP prep, knowing that there aren't audiobooks for all of these. Some of them were like 600-page textbooks. Like no one's getting through, like even maybe two books would be a stretch for anyone on top of all the other studying. So that's how the show was created and born. And then Jennifer was in that first year. I did co-hosts rotating with each episode, and Jennifer was on a couple of our episodes, and we had so much fun. We decided to just make it a permanent thing and are now in our fifth year of doing the show. And we do much more recent books, things that have been published in the last year or two, to get the authors on and help promote their work as well as educate our audience.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. And I'm Jennifer. And as Stephanie said, I came on as a full-time co-host in season two, but I actually got to be the first co-host of our very first season as well. So I came on, and I like to think that like I'm a planner and a lawyer. So I like to think I bring a little different perspective from just the planning side as we're reading through our books.
Cool. Thank you. You did a great job introducing yourselves. Um, so for those of you who are not already members of the interest group, we would love to have you join us. It is free. It is open to everyone. You do not need to be an APA member to join the interest group. So if you go to apacommunityengagement.org, you will see the link to sign up there. Then you will automatically get subscribed to our newsletter. So you'll be notified of other webinars like this, and we have some other resources on there to share with you. This is being recorded, and the recording will be shared on our YouTube channel. So you'll get a link to that as well. And we're going to put together a handout to go along with it. We can list out some of the equipment and the tools that we mentioned. We'll send that out in our newsletter. And we are a community-powered peer learning organization. So we thrive off of content from our members. So if you guys have case studies, best practices, inspiring stories, whatnot, ideas for webinars, please email us hello@apacommunityengagement.org and we'll see if we can't get you onto our website, newsletter, webinar schedule, etc. So that's it. That's a spiel for the interest group. Then we're going to jump right into our first topic covering some of the hardware. Stephanie or Jennifer, would you like me? I can control the slides or I think I can turn it over to you to control if you prefer.
I'm okay with you managing the slides if you're good with that.
Okay, that works for me.
Okay. So then let's jump in on what you need to start a podcast. The first thing that I want to say is that you actually don't need anything super fancy to start a podcast. If you do not have the resources to do so, but you have your laptop and you have Zoom, you have everything you need to actually start a podcast. But there are other things that make your podcast a lot better and more professional as you start working through those things. And the first thing you have to start thinking about is who's your audience? Who are you trying to reach and how are you trying to reach them? So, in our original conversations, when we were first kicking around the idea of booked on planning, we had a working group that talked about how we wanted to put these together. And neither Stephanie nor myself nor anyone else that was in that group had really ever done a podcast or worked on anything that required like audio editing or video editing or anything really like that in complexity. So we decided to just do audio. But you have to think about like, are you putting it on YouTube? How are you trying to reach out to people? But the reason we went with audio is because it's actually quite complex to do audio and video editing to put out a really clean podcast into like Apple or Stitcher or anything like that. So one of the podcasts I didn't mention earlier that's no longer going, but was one of my favorites was the Planning Commission podcast. And the way they put out their podcast was they just recorded the whole thing on YouTube and then downloaded all of the audio onto Apple. And you got everything. You got every pause, every thought where someone stopped and considered. And it really worked out well for them on YouTube, but it was a little harder to engage on Apple. So we work only in audio and then we do some basic recording for our social media. How do we want to do questions? Just like ask questions throughout the whole thing?
Yeah, we're a small enough group that I think everyone can just jump in. I mean, maybe use the raise your hand feature and then we can call on you and just take questions as we go rather than waiting till the end.
Okay, perfect. Are there any questions at this point? Otherwise, I'll move on. Okay. So the next challenge we had was how do you set up a recording studio in your office that you have to work in every day and it's not a professional recording studio? So we did a deep dive into what you need to think about. And especially here, you can see I have brought in chairs with fabric, I have blankets. I've put up some stuff on walls. You need to think about how you can create like a sound deadening, soft space. Stephanie has an isolation shield that she's holding up right now, so that it kind of blocks anything coming from her computer and around her. Um, Hers is probably the better setup, if I'm honest, than trying to bring like your whole home into your office, but it's an option. And then the other conversation that we had to have was how professional were we going to get? Were we going to bring in a mixer board? Were we going to really work deep into the audio? Not necessarily. Unless you are super well versed in sound editing, we have found that the editing software that Stephanie is going to talk to you about in a few minutes was good enough. We feel that we do a good job of creating a really high quality podcast without having to bring in that extra software, but it's there for you if you want it. The most important piece of equipment that you are going to buy is your microphone. Stephanie started out with her husband's microphone. It's about a $50 microphone. I started out with a microphone I bought from Amazon. It was about a $40 microphone. If you listen to our first season, we should have spent a little more money on microphones. S- it's just the truth. So now we both have really good microphones. We spent about $80 on our microphone. So we're not here to tell you to go out and buy a $500 microphone. You don't have to do that. Somewhere around the $100 range feels like we feel that that's been pretty good. Steph, do you have anything to add
I would
on
just
that?
say, yeah, not necessarily the price, but the one thing you need to make sure is that it's a dynamic microphone. So the one that I started out with, that was a horrible mic that my husband had bought for he was going to start his own podcast and that failed. But there was like a $20 difference between our microphones, but his was not a dynamic microphone. The one I have now is, and the sound quality is vastly different, vastly improved. So that's one thing to look out for when you're selecting a microphone.
Yeah, and I will also say one of the microphones I started using when I was working out was a blue microphone that was supposed to be more of a room microphone where you could like set it in the middle of the table and it should be able to pick up everyone's vocals. And I had sat in a room where it did a great job of that, but then when you're just in your own office space recording, that wasn't as good either. So maybe don't pick up a group table microphone either if you can avoid it. Um, then we had the opportunity to record live, and we got the opportunity to record live twice. And unsurprisingly, our second one went better. So in our I Steph, I'll probably have you talk about the first one because it was in season one and I wasn't involved. So what kind of microphones did you use and what were the outcomes of that?
Yeah, so our first live episode was at our fall workshop with Alana Bruce. I'm blanking on the name of her book at the moment, but so we just had my laptop there recording it and a microphone sitting between the two of us. And if you listen to that episode, it is pretty awful. It's really hard to hear things. It's kind of staticky, and it wasn't meant to pick up both of our voices. So when we this last fall started organizing an interview with Henry Graber, we learned those lessons on having individual microphones for each individual and invested in some lavalier mics that went on your shirt. And so then it picked up everyone's audio separately, and we were able to cancel out any background noise because they were recording everyone's audio on different channels. So if you heard the background of someone answering a question on someone else's mic, you could just mute that down. It made
Yeah.
it a much better episode.
Alana's book is called Recast Your City. And then one tip that we did have to learn the hard way in our lapel mics as well is, uh, gentlemen, you might not have this problem, but if you have long hair, don't flip your hair over your shoulder and have it sitting on your mic because it turns out it doesn't record very well. Ask me how I know. So think about where you're placing your mic for live events. Make sure that it's close enough that you're going to be able to pick up, but not somewhere that you're going to, I don't know your habits, but if you're going to pick at your clothes like I do, or mess with your hair, make sure that your microphones are sitting not where you're going to do that. So, and Steph, I'm going to have to turn over to you the USB versus the XLR microphone.
I might actually ask Kelly for that one because we only use USB microphones. I haven't used an
Yeah.
XLR.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can quickly cover this. So I have right now what I'm using is a USB microphone, which means it just plugs directly into my computer with a USB. It's super simple. Um, I also record music, and if you happen to be a musician, you might be, let's see if I can hold this up. You might be familiar with this microphone cable. Well, this doesn't plug into your computer. So you have to then get an interface, something like this. This is it's called a Focusrite. I'm not like promoting this particular brand or anything, but you have to have something like this where you can then it's an interface between your microphone and the computer. So it just makes it a little bit more of a complicated setup. If you're into super high quality audio and you want some specialized equipment and microphone, you might want to go that direction, but it's absolutely not necessary. And I actually wouldn't recommend it for a beginner. I would go USB mic.
Yeah, and that's the comment earlier Jennifer was making about the mixer board. Like that's where you would use an XLR microphone is if you had a mixer board where you could uh, mess with everyone's volumes, change settings and pitch and all of that, which is far more advanced than we are really interested in. And since ours is a remote interview kind of podcast, we're never in the same room, so there's no need for something like a mixer board.
Right. And even the one time that Stephanie and so we're in the city of Lincoln, and yes, we are seeing the red on the board. Don't worry, you guys, you're not
Yeah, that's
visualizing that.
me.
We'll get it taken
I
care of.
accidentally clicked the pen and I've just been drawing all over the slide the whole time. And now I have to figure out how to delete it.
So that's okay. Well, we
There,
were,
did it, done. Okay.
woohoo!
That's hilarious.
Um, so in our community, we like Stephanie and I are both in Lincoln, Nebraska, and the flagship university campus for the University of Nebraska is in our town. And we were able to go to the university's recording podcast studio.
What?
Um,
I don't know.
and it's okay. We'll be able to read it. So we were able to sit in a room together, but our guest wasn't necessarily in there, and they're almost never in there.
I,
So with us.
I know.
So even if you have that opportunity,
Oh my
it's still
gosh.
probably
Okay.
easier to use your USB.
I don't know what is, I'm sorry, I'm distracting everyone in the background. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing the screen actually for a moment. Do you guys have the slides pulled up on your
Yep, I
end?
can I can
Okay,
pull can I pull up? Okay, you know what? We're just going to talk about headphones while we figure this out.
there we go. Yeah, I don't
Um,
know what is going haywire with my
yarn
presentation.
bomb.
I
Um,
also I
Go
just
ahead,
dropped in
Steph.
the chat. We with the University of Nebraska, our planning program, we were trying to get a mini series off the ground, and we were only able to get 2 episodes, so we just put them on our website. But both of those were done in that podcasting studio, so you can, and there's some pictures there, so you can listen to the episode and hear what the quality is of using those kind of XLR mics and the soundboards and being in like a fully padded room more controlled and then compare it to some of the others episodes, one of our episodes where we're just in our offices recording, but you can see the difference in kind of the setup and what it would take to do a full scale setup like what the university has.
Yes, it is a huge setup. So then we always recommend that our authors put on headphones. It's a twofold thing. You know, the mic is here to help filter out sound so that you are speaking directly into the microphone and it's picking up your voice and it's helping to filter out background noise. But the other problem too is hearing. Like you have to be able to hear the questions well. You have to be able to think about what you're going to say. And sometimes if you don't have your headphones, sound can reverberate through if you're just like sitting on your laptop and you're talking and we like cough or something and you don't have your headphones in, the your mic will pick up the sound that comes through from your laptop. So, or my very favorite, when you get a ding, you have an email. If we have headphones and a mic, that's less likely to get picked up. So when you're thinking about your headphones, I have my very favorite set of headphones. I brought it to the office today just to share. Are to listen to music and stuff. Are these Bose? They're noise canceling. They're lovely. They're terrible to try and record a podcast with. Half the time my Bluetooth on my laptop will drop or the battery will die or something will go bad with these headphones. So what we recommend is a corded headphone that plugs right into your operating system. You will have like you will not lose your connection, your Bluetooth won't drop. It's built right in. And also for whatever reason, sometimes Zoom doesn't like to play well with the Bose, and it's not just me. We had an author who used Bose headphones, and all of a sudden the microphone just decided, no, I'm not picking up your sound anymore. And you can hear the issue. And I have all of my booked on planning books back here. So if I'm looking over my shoulder, it's because I'm actually looking at my books, trying to remember. It was Meet Me at the Library. So if you want to hear what it sounds like to have somebody uh, trying to use Bluetooth headphones and record a podcast, you can hear that on Meet Me at the Library.
And he had a very awkward setup where he had to hold the headphones close to
Yeah,
his
yeah,
like
he
down
had
on
to
his ears the whole time. So I felt
hold
bad
one of
for him
these.
for
Oh
30
no.
minutes trying to do an interview that way.
So just little tips and tricks. The headphones that both Stephanie and I are wearing that we invested in, they are a little bit of an investment. They're the Sony MDR 7506 professional headphones. And I can't help but plug a Taylor Swift reference. If you watch the New Heights podcast episode, she was also wearing these headphones. But they are about $115, so a bit of an investment. And then finally, when you're thinking about how to set up your station and what you're trying to do and how you're trying to present, you have to think about lighting. Stephanie and I both chose today to be examples of what you probably shouldn't do, which is sit with your back to a window and be backlit. But we had to also work our day jobs. I know, so hard. And this is the setup of our offices. But ideally, you would want to have some kind of a soft diffused light coming from about eye level here. A window is great. A window, if you have a nice, I don't know, like a little curtain that's kind of opaque to help diffuse that light through. Or, of course, we can always go with our very lovely circle lights, ring lights, anything like that. Oh, yep, I can share the Sony headphone model again. And Steph, do you want to drop it in the chat while I read it back out?
Yeah, and one thing I'll also note about lighting, it doesn't matter if you're only recording for audio. So Jennifer and I, if we use clips on our social media, it's only of the authors, so it doesn't we record here with our terrible lighting.
Yeah. Okay, so that headphone again was the Sony MDR 7506 professional headphones. And we only recently started using video clips in our social media. So, and we're going to talk about how to promote your podcast here in a bit too. But again, since we don't put it up on YouTube, we hadn't really been doing video clips, so we weren't too worried about it. But now we just had an author. I happen to love his background, but he has two kids at home and he was recording from home. So there were like toys and stuff in the background. And I think it's amazing because that's just real life. But you do kind of want to think about how you're lighting yourself, how you're setting your stage, what's behind you. You know, I mean, we all learned about this when we all had to switch over in the pandemic, but so I think that that's pretty much it. And as I mentioned at the top, yes, we have some fancy equipment here, but you do not have to have expensive equipment to start. If you have an idea and you want to do it, just start. Record your podcast, get it out in the world, and you can start tweaking it as you go. In our first season, we had different intro music than we have now. In our first season, we had different equipment than we have now. So it does sound a little different, but people are generally very kind and forgiving because they just want the information that you're giving them.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, I'm gonna try sharing this again. I don't know what's gonna happen. All right. Do you want to touch real quickly on some of the different recording platforms?
Yeah, so when we started the podcast, budget style, we used Zoom because we had access to, or I had access to Zoom through my employer, so I didn't have that 40-minute cutoff. Most of our episodes were falling under that anyways, but we just sent out a Zoom invite and a meeting invite to our authors. It was easy because we started it basically peak pandemic, and everyone had, at least by that time, figured out Zoom. So it was a platform that everyone was comfortable with and made it easy to record that way. One thing I figured out pretty quickly that is super important if you want to make your life easier on editing is to change your Zoom settings so that the recordings are on separate channels. Because if someone's got something weird in their background or they start talking over you, but you keep on with your thought, you want to be able to just delete out their audio and to create a kind of clean, smooth audio setup. So that's one thing with Zoom to make it a little bit easier on yourself. One drawback with Zoom is you'll have an extra step to if you're going to do editing and clean it up because Zoom publishes as an MP4 file, but you need an MP3 in order to do any sort of editing in the software platform. So always had to upload it to, I use something called anyconvo.com, I think it was, but if you just Google like an MP3 converter, you'll find a ton of them. But you had to edit it, download it, then uploaded it back into your software. So it was one extra step in order to get things edited. We
Yeah, and Steph,
just
if you're okay with me jumping in real quick too, um, you also probably want to make sure that you are recording to your editor's system. So a few times I set up the Zoom, and so then it recorded down to my laptop, and then I had to make sure that everything got dragged over. Stephanie set up a Dropbox. We had to make sure that everything got drug over, and did have one moment, one instance where I thought I'd gotten it drug over, and I thought that it had uploaded, but I did not realize that the upload had failed. So then I had to come back to my work computer because that's where we had recorded it on and redo the download. So just make sure the system that you're probably editing from or the act like that everything got put where it's supposed to go. Otherwise, you're gonna have a fun weekend running around and trying to find your recordings again.
And one solution to that is to do some sort of online software, podcasting software. There's a number of them out there. I had looked into Riverside FM. That's a big one. Didn't decide to go with them. The one we did go with that I have more experience with is Descript. And we only started using Descript in the last 2 months, I think, 2.5 months. And so far, we have about 4 episodes that have been recorded on it, and it's all gone well. The benefits of an online platform like this is that it's recording on everyone's local computers. So if anything crashes or you have a bad audio connection, if they're recording from somewhere that's more challenging, it's recording it locally and then it uploads it once you're done recording. Usually takes like 30 seconds. So as you're just chatting and saying thank you or whatever, it's uploaded and then you have it available. It'll record as one file or multiple different files. It's a lot easier to clean up too because it's an editing software as well. So you can edit based on text. So it auto transcribes everything for you. And so you can delete words or change words. Like everything now, there's an AI component to it. So you can do some quick cleanups of getting rid of ums and ahs or any pauses that are more than 3 seconds or different things like that. It'll auto clean it up. And then Jennifer mentioned that we're doing more short video clips with our social media promotions, and Descript is how we're doing that. You can have it auto generate different clips for you or create your own short little video clips, but a little more engaging and interesting than just what we had been doing, which was Jennifer would just come up with quotes, put it on a little template, and have a static photo on our social media. But this is the author talking, and then it's has the citations or the script showing of what they're saying underneath it. So a lot of different tools that you can use on that. And I don't know if you want me to share my screen here. I can walk through that.
Yeah, sure. I think next what we have is the live demos. So perfect. I will stop sharing mine and you should be able to go ahead and share yours. Or let me see. Yeah, you should be able to share yours, Stephanie.
Okay.
Okay. And while Stephanie is getting that loaded up, again, I want to re-emphasize, and this will be my takeaway throughout the whole presentation is start where you are. So we had Zoom. We knew how to use Zoom. Zoom was comfortable. So don't think you have to go out and like launch a whole new educational activity and learn a new software. Start simple, start where you are.
So this is what the Descript platform looks like. I guess I can start at home. Has kind of your basic template you can go into projects. So these are all the episodes we've recorded so far. Trends report, this is one that's coming up. So I just created the link to send to the author that we're going to be interviewing. But what it looks like when you actually have done a recording, as I mentioned, it auto transcribes, so it's not perfect. There's some misspellings and sometimes it'll miss a word or two. So there's a little bit of cleanup to do with it, but it makes it easy. You can do things like, I want this text to fall down here, so you can just cut and then put it down here, paste. You can Control Z to undo it. Delete words like here. Jennifer said, so you can just delete that and then that takes it out of there. So it's a lot easier if you're not comfortable with editing an actual file. But if you are, you can always pull up the actual WAV file here and do things like select a piece of it and then mess around with it. There's a couple different tools that you can use. Select, hand, blade will cut a piece in half if you want to cut part of it. Range will select a piece that you can delete. You can slip in a section. So if you're wanting to put in like your intro music, you can always add in a piece to the beginning and then drop that in. They have access to media. So if you're doing like a actual video podcast, you can drop that in, or audio, you can do your intro, outro music, little swoosh effects if you're transitioning between. So it's all in there for you. And then, as I mentioned, some of the AI tools. So you can just click edit for clarity. Sound Studio is one I put on all of them. So it just does a basic cleanup of sound and gets rid of any background effects. Removing filler words like ums, ahs, anything repeated. You do have to be a little careful. I can't remember our first episode we tried this on. I did one and it got rid of way too much. So I spent a lot of time actually putting it back in. So it'll tell you, it'll do like a little notch, like you can see here, if it took something out. And so you can always go back and put it back in and recreate it. Um,
Yeah,
there's,
while you're podcasting, you will learn every verbal tick you have, and you will all of a sudden know how often you say the word It's a lot. I say it a lot.
yeah. Um, Speaking of, I forget what his role is, but he's at APA National. His name's Michael, and he does a lot of with their podcasts and audio stuff. And he said he was interviewing one of the staff there, or he was recording an episode and editing it from one of the staff there, and took out every one of her verbal cues of ums and ahs and just put them all together. And it was like 5 minutes worth of it or something like that.
Yeah.
And he said she never did it again. She was very aware of it.
Stephanie's
Uh,
never been that mean to me, so I haven't had to worry about that.
no. And here's where I was mentioning you can create clips. So you can auto generate, you can set it to like do 3 of them or 5 of them and how long or short you want them. Create a highlight reel, translate if you want to translate in other languages. I haven't done that to know exactly how it works. The publishing side, this is super helpful. We used to have our hosting platform, Buzzsprout, do this for us, but we were able to just offset the costs having a Descript license and then took that out of our subscription on Buzzsprout. So if you want help with drafting a title, it can generate a few ideas for you. It'll summarize your episode for you, and then you can edit it. It'll draft your show notes, a description for YouTube, the social posts if you're just going to do basic text and not use the clips, and then it'll draft a blog post for you. I haven't done anything with these right tools below. One drawback is that in the free version, you can't really do a whole lot. You're very limited. You could do like probably a 30-minute episode a month, and that's about it. So if you're going to do more podcasting, you'd have to pay for at least the lower tier. And the way all these AI tools work is you have a certain number of tokens. And so each run of one of these costs a certain amount of tokens. I haven't found a good summary of how much everything costs because we ran out last month and it was a little frustrating and I had to do some things by hand. Showed me how much I rely on some of these AI tools to make life easier and quicker. But for the most part, it's been a really good platform. Trying to see if there's any, you can mess around with audio, the volume up and down. I don't know if
Stephanie, we have a
it's
question in the chat. Does the free version limit episode length or episode numbers as well for shorter clips?
It limits the number or the minutes that you can do. I can't remember exactly how many minutes it is, but it's a number of minutes of recording, and then there's a certain number of credits. It's pretty low for doing the AI tools. I, off the top of my head, don't know exactly.
I remember, Steph, you were telling me when we did our test, we used up about half of the free minutes that we had for that month just doing the test, and our test only lasted about 15 minutes. So
Mhm.
it's not much.
Yeah. So that's Descript. So that one most likely is going to cost a little bit. I did a recording because this next one, Audacity, it's a free software that you can download to do all the editing. But since it's a software, I don't have it on my work computer. I just did a little recording of different tools and how it works. So as I mentioned, you import the MP3 files. You can, once you've converted them, if you do like Zoom recording, you can just drop them in, can drag different sizes. You can zoom in and out. The quick keys are a little bit unique. So to zoom in and out, normally it's like the plus and minus, but for Audacity, it's 1 and 3. You hold shift and do 1 and 3. So you can zoom into a certain area. What I do with all of the episodes is a loudness normalization, one of the tools that makes everyone's audio the same. So, like if you've listened to a podcast where the ads just blow up in sound and then it goes back down quiet during the episode, they haven't normalized it, which is really annoying as a listener. So, all of my audio, I set it to -19. So, everything is coming in at the same level. You can drag things. So, each one of these is a channel. So, you can drag things so that your intro starts after your music is fading out. You can delete different things. I set it up so all of our sponsors were already in there, and I just delete out which audios I didn't need for that month. Um, Here, I think so. I'm showing how you would delete if someone's saying like or has a pause or you need to clip something out, you just select it all and delete it. But you need to make sure you're doing it with all speakers because then the audio is not going to match up because they're all on different channels. You can record in Audacity too. So if you are just doing a solo show and you're not interviewing people, you could just record straight into Audacity and skip the step of having to import anything. There's a whole bunch of different tools. This is where I'm not a sound engineer or by any means technical, so I don't think I've used 90% of these. So if you understand this kind of stuff, there's a lot of different tools that you can really make the audio pretty amazing, but it's a decent platform to be able to just do simple things. You can mute things. So if you have a couple different audios going at once and you want one quiet and to be able to focus in on the other, you can mute different channels. And then exporting it, it exports to an MP3. You could do an upload into a cloud space, but I always just keep it simple and export the MP3. And that is Audacity.
And some podcasters still choose Audacity when we have other, maybe more sophisticated tools at this point?
Audacity is still a good editing software. It does a lot, and you can clean up audio pretty simply once you get the hang of it, and it's free. So that's probably the main reason people still use Audacity is there's no cost to it. So I think that covers all of the demo pieces of it. If anyone had any more specific questions. I suppose it is a little bit of demoing, but I was going to talk a little bit about Buzzsprout. This is how we get all of our episodes published to all the different podcast platforms. So we can see all of our episodes here. To upload a new episode, you just drag and drop your MP3 here. This is where I was talking about how we got rid of these two tools and instead just pay for it through Descript. But Magic Mastering essentially is that quick cleanup, making your audio sound good. And then Co-host AI gives you access to that auto transcribing, creating the blog post, creating a title for your show. So you can add those to, I think they're like $10 or $8 um, for each one on top of the subscription, which is pretty affordable. I think it's $20 a month, 18 or $20. So it's not too much just to host your podcast. The directories, so these are all the ones that we've connected into. So it'll automatically publish for us to Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. You just have to go through the process to get it listed. Um, so it's not terribly difficult. RSS feed. So this is what you can paste into other players. So yeah, as far as I'll just go into an actual episode. So when you were to upload it, you can put your title, description. We always add show notes. You can create your own cover art for it or design one. It connects into Canvas, tell you the season, episode, whether or not you're using explicit material. Our guest that day was swearing, so I had to mark it explicit. And then you can schedule it. Normally, it would have the scheduling button here, so you can set it to go 2 weeks out in the future at 5 a.m. or whatever. Yeah, here it is. So you could set it to schedule whenever. You can add chapter markers. You can create a visual soundbite. So it's just the audio for it over the episode cover art that you pick. You can add in mid-roll placements, which is your advertisements. You can set certain sponsors, create a special episode guest. So there's a lot of different tools in here. And what I really love, because I'm a data person, is the stats. You can see how your episodes, the peaks are when we release a new episode. So we get a couple hundred downloads the day that it comes out, and then it kind of tapers off. But you can go all time, cumulative. You can see what types of platforms are being used, which episodes are the most popular. They do like a little predictor of what your next episode might be. You can get super specific on each individual episode in its first days, apps and devices, locations. It's really kind of fun to see that our podcast has reached all the continents except Antarctica at least once. Um, it creates a little website for you, but we have our own website, so we use Wix for our podcast. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead. I think, yeah.
I
Yeah,
think I
I
think
think
you're
you are.
good.
Yeah,
Or
you're
wait.
fine.
Yeah.
Sorry, just got on a roll there. So we use Wix. So that's our website dashboard. They have a really good interface for bringing in a podcast. So we use that RS feed to go directly into our website. So they update every day. We have it set up that the most recent episode is what's on our webpage. And then all the back episodes, there's like a widget for the podcast. And so they all just stack here. You can't edit them, which is annoying, but they usually come in pretty user friendly. Uh, but also on Wix, we're able to do a blog. So we do episode summaries in text form that we then put out on our different channels. Um, and then we do our newsletter through Wix as well. Um, Other ones that I know, Squarespace is a pretty good website platform, easy to use. And then WordPress is also, they have free versions. So that is also another cost-friendly version of hosting your platform. And I think that covers everything unless there's any questions on any of that.
Stephanie, can you talk about how long it takes you from beginning to end, like from, hitting record, or maybe even the prep work that goes into it too, to hitting publish and it shows up on your website? How long does it take on average?
Yeah, for my portion of it. So Jennifer and I divide and conquer all the tasks, and I tend to do more of the editing and preparation for the social media channels. And so it takes about 6 to 7 hours per episode for me to produce, and that's not counting developing the interview questions, coordinating with the authors, or reading the books. That's just doing that interview, which usually takes 45 minutes, sometimes an hour, doing our intro piece of it, editing it, getting it up onto Buzzsprout, writing the descriptions, putting that all in. It's about 6 to 7 hours.
Yeah. And on the front end side of that, just when we're coordinating with the authors and stuff, it can it really varies by author. So if the author is well known and their contact information is out there and they respond to emails quickly and I don't have to follow up, it's maybe 45 minutes of my time. But more often it's actually like 2 to 3 hours of finding their contact information because just because they have a book out doesn't mean they have a blog or an email, or they have an email. But a lot of our authors are also either retired or somewhere a little on the older spectrum. So like their email is an AOL and it's hidden. And so then I have to like reach out to the publisher and ask for the contact information from the publisher. And they don't just give out emails. So they have to email the author, CC me. So there's a bunch of back and forth. And it's normally more like 2 or 3 hours of trying to track people down, get schedules aligned, and work through that. So you are looking probably at 10 extra hours an episode just to get everything prepped, besides reading the book and putting together questions. And two people who are incredibly slow readers chose to start a book podcast. So that's fine.
And I will say that's if you're doing a show like ours, and because it takes me maybe 2 to 3 hours, depending on how well spoken the author is, for me to edit an episode. But if you're doing a type of podcast where you're just creating a script and more reading it and producing it in like a story format or something that doesn't require another person, you can control the actual recording piece of it, so it's a lot cleaner and way quicker to edit and clean up. The flip side is that you're probably developing a script that takes a little bit longer to write all that out, but then you're saving a ton of time on the editing. So it just depends on the structure of your show, how much you're going to spend on actual editing, because that can eat up a lot of the time to produce it every week.
Yeah, good point. Um, Before we move on, well, I guess, is there any questions from anyone on anything we've covered so far? Okay, don't see any. So, before we move on, the next part of our agenda is about interviewing techniques, and that we had on our agenda to take us through the end of the hour. Um, we we budgeted 75 minutes for this whole webinar, so we hope that you can stay on with us through the end. If you need to jump off, we understand. We won't take it personally. But if you can stick around, we do have more material to cover after the hour's over, and then we can go into more time for Q&A. So let me reshare, since I spent time making these cute slides. Might as well show them, right?
Yeah, we love them.
Okay. All right. We talked about that. So we're moving on to interviewing techniques. I think Jennifer, you're going to talk about that.
Yep. So, as Stephanie and I were just talking about, for the way that we do our podcast, we try to highlight the main points of the book. So the intention of the podcast is that our listeners can come away with like the key points that the author is trying to get across, and hopefully a desire to go pick up the book. Or on the flip side, we think that this is successful as well, where somebody listens to the podcast and goes, nope, actually, I don't need to go pick up that book. I understand the topic as well as I need to. But how do we get there? So for us, our first step is, of course, always reading the book. And I know that I do a little extra looking, and I think Stephanie does too. If we know the author has done some other articles or whatever, kind of similar to the topic, we'll kind of dig into that as well. And then we prepare our guests. So a week ahead of the podcast, we normally record on Fridays at noon. So my Friday afternoon, a week ahead, is prepping an email, giving all of the tips on how to get everything set up and how to log into Descript and how to make sure you have your headphones and all of that. And then we provide our questions that Stephanie and I have developed in advance as we read through that book. I do know like a friend of ours just sits down and wings it, does not give their interviewee any like prep questions or anything. Yes, Kara, that's my reaction to that too. And I have sat on his radio show, and it's not my favorite thing to get peppered with questions. So, we think that the best way to prep an interviewee is to at least give them an overview. We give them the 10 questions that we intend to ask, but you should at least give them like, these are the topics that we're thinking of covering. Here's kind of a guideline of what you had said before. Something to help them wrap their brain around where you want to drive the conversation, because of course you are driving a conversation overall. You pulled points, you have things you want to say, so you're kind of in the driver's seat. Don't put them in the back seat when they should be in the passenger seat with you. um and dig a little deeper. Like, you know, I always think like your first impulse isn't the impulse you need to worry about. It's your second thought that you have after that initial impulse. So think about your question, or like write the question that comes to mind, and then ask yourself a little bit like, what point are you actually trying to pull from this question, and see if you can go a little deeper. You do not want yes, no questions. Most often, this is supposed to be a conversation. So you want the interviewer or interviewee to give you an answer. Something like, yes, that's a great point because XYZ. Um, on the flip side, you need to have nice ways to maybe cut people off a little bit too. Stephanie and I are mostly successful by when we set up, we ask our question and then we shut down our mics so that we're not any noise that we might make doesn't come through in our author's answer. But then we turn our mic back on. And a lot of times our interviewee sees that and goes, "Oh, did you have follow-up?" So that's one polite way to kind of be like, "Hey, we needed an answer. We didn't need a 10-minute answer." Um, the other part of it too, some people, one of the things we were worried about was that some people would find our podcast overly scripted because it's like question, answer. So you read the book, you prepped for the interview, whatever it is that you're going to do, you've prepped for this. So be able to respond to what your interviewee actually does say. In our first few episodes that we were doing, I was so focused on, I asked my question and I kind of stopped listening, which is terrible. But I was still learning things and feeling it out. So be ready to say, yeah, and you also made this other point, and um, that's really great. Can you talk about this next question that I have because I thought of something? Try and keep it conversational so that it's not just like bam, 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 bam. Um, is there, let's see, my examples from Booked on Planning. Well, like I said, maybe don't listen to my first 4 episodes if you're wanting something that doesn't sound like a question and answer. Steph, do you have any other podcast interview tips?
Yeah, I mean, and ours is this is more specific to our Q&A style of podcast, but it really hinges on your guest and how engaging they can be, because you can write the best questions, send them ahead of time, and if they're like a nervous speaker or if they're a rambler or just have some more unique ways of answering your questions, it can make the episode feel a little awkward, and you have to do a little bit more on editing to try and clean it up or clip out when they go on. It's always awkward to me when the first question we ask, the author spends like 7 minutes answering it. It's just like a huge amount of one person talking to lead off your episode. So trying to find ways to clean it up so that it flows a little better. And especially if you have those authors that or guests that just keep going and going and going, it's hard to interject your follow-up questions to make it a little more engaging. It tends to just fall flat into a Q&A.
Yeah, I will say Stephanie has worked some magic on the editing side of some of our interviews. We did have one person And I think fast, speak fast, and I know that that can be annoying too, but this man had the slowest cadence in the world. And so Stephanie was able to do some cleanup on the back end. You do have to be prepared though, because he noticed when he listened to his episode, he emailed and was like, I don't think I've ever spoke this fast in my life. And it was, I don't know, maybe like a half a second speed up. So thanks, Sebastian, for joining us. I look forward to it, or we appreciate it. Look forward to connecting later. But Stephanie has done some magic in our post cleanup.
I'm curious. So I forgot to mention this in the beginning of the session that as part of the interest group, I used to do a podcast. We stopped doing it because we just prefer to have more interactive things like this. But there's past episodes you can go listen to on our website. And something I struggled with personally, one, like you said, Jennifer, I'll ask my question and then forget to listen to the response and just kind of zone out and you go, oh, uh-oh. Um, the other thing, I didn't realize how hard it was to come up with a response to what they said. And I found myself starting to say the same things. I would go, oh, that's interesting. Wow. I would kept saying the same things over and over again. Have you found any way to overcome that?
No.
One thing that's I think easy for us, and I haven't actually done this because I haven't, it was a recent idea I had on this topic of queuing up a follow-up question. And it's easier for us because we've read the book and we know what we pretty well have an idea of what their answer is going to be. So my thought was creating a pre-baked follow-up that we don't send them so they don't know what's coming, but it's ready to go of like, okay, if they answer this way, this is going to be my follow-up. So you're not coming up with something on the spot because it can be hard to listen to what they're saying, try and come up with a response. Because sometimes I'll have like a great follow-up and then they go on a different tangent that
Mm,
is so far away that I'm like, I could jump back, but this is a weird flow. So I'm just going to let that
right.
go.
Right. Oh, that's a smart idea. Yeah, pre-planning your responses a bit more. Or have
Yeah.
any like a list, like a sheet of responses that you could just be like,
Oh,
just pick
yeah,
one.
a good
And
transition.
I would say
Yeah.
I actually do have a post-it note of basically just words like instead of oh interesting, I'll be like, oh, that's fantastic. Like there, and yes, it sounds dumb, but I'm like, interesting, fantastic. Oh, I never thought of that. All written on a post-it note, sitting in front of my computer so that I am ready with when I go to say interesting, because that is my verbal tick. Instead, I'm like,
Yes.
oh, fascinating. I see that word. So I've come up with some synonyms, but I don't know that that's actually good advice. It's just how I'm working my way
Hey,
through this.
it's something different that I hadn't tried. So I love it. All right, let's see. I think we're good on this, unless anyone had any questions that they wanted to ask. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide here. I think this is the last topic before we get to the Q&A, right? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. So, if you want to jump in and talk about how to
Yeah.
promote your podcast.
Yeah. There's value in just creating. So if you want to create a podcast that's just for you, there's value in that. But most of us want our podcast to go out to someone. And the way you have to promote yourself. Stephanie and I are both Midwestern. We're not particularly great at promoting ourselves, and we have had to work really hard on this. So we started just with sharing our episodes. We put them out on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on our social media. We have Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. Um, and we started really small with just static posts, just getting the information out there. Like, hey, this episode exists. We use Loomly to schedule all of our posts, and we had the very great opportunity to piggyback off of APA Nebraska's socials. So they had a very well established social media presence with a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 people following. It was just APA Nebraska. We were a small group, but they had a pretty significant following for what we were doing. So we were able to piggyback off of them. And the other thing we did is we created a stand-up banner and we printed off some bookmarks and some stickers and would hand those out in conferences. And you could see Stephanie and I at like the APA National, very surreptitiously dropping stickers on tables where we knew we were not actually supposed to be dropping stickers in tables, but we figured the worst thing that would happen was the cleaning crew would pick them up. And the best thing that would happen was that somebody would find a sticker on the table and listen to our podcast. So we started very, very small with those kinds of things. We then kind of moved up when we were finally able to make a partnership with publishers, which is unique to the podcast we have. But we get publishers send us books and such to help do media promotion of the books. So once we had really established some good relationships with publishers, we were able to get extra copies of books. So we'd have the two that we read, and then we'd have maybe one or two extras. And we started raffling those books off at the conferences and fall workshops that we would attend. And that I really did think was a good push and got us some people. And then, as we talked about earlier, now we are a little more sophisticated, using a little better tool sets. So we're using Descript to create those sound bites, the video sound bites. We're really pushing things out as like reels. We've started really learning about the social media algorithm, which is terrible, but you got to use it to your advantage. So we've learned about that, and we're putting reels out now instead. And then Stephanie is the master of our website and blog posting on our website. So we have that really helps with your search engine optimization. Having those blog posts out there. So if someone Googles a book, Booked on Planning's blog post about it shows up pretty high on the search list and almost always on Google's first page. So that's awesome. And then our newest little baby that we're so very proud of, well, two of our newest little babies that we're very proud of is we just started the Bookworm, which is a newsletter. We met with a marketing specialist who reminded us that some things can come and go, platforms come and go. We don't control whether or not Apple Podcast still exists in 2 years or whatever, but we control if a newsletter exists. So that is a way that we can get our podcast out without relying on other people, other platforms, and help build up the audience. And so far, the Bookworm has really grown with people downloading and signing up for it. And the other thing, like with our book or with our newsletter, it's more than just our episodes. Like we also promote other interesting content, events. Our last one went out with some news articles on gathering and being social that went along with Messy Cities. We also highlight other work that our authors are doing. So if they've put out other articles recently or whatever, we share that. And the whole point of that idea is you want it to be something sendable, right? Like I read a newsletter and I'm like, oh, that article is really awesome. Stephanie would love that. Forward the newsletter. So then you want to give people a reason to send your newsletter to other people. And
I want to jump in here real quick. When we're talking about the newsletter and cheap workarounds to keep your podcast costs down, we'd already invested into Descript. We have Buzzsprout and Wix. We were paying a certain amount. And with that, we got a certain number of 300 emails a month can get sent through that account without having to upgrade to another tier. And we'll send an email out with the new release of the episode. So it's 2 a month. And then we started doing this newsletter. And that third email a month was kicking us over, especially because when we started the newsletter, we got a bunch of new subscribers because we were really promoting it and added a little pop-up banner on our website. And I didn't want to have to pay another subscription. And so we added Substack to our social media platforms, and we're able to just schedule those episode release emails to come out of Substack instead and get emailed to our listserv. And then we only send the newsletter through the Wix account. So it adds another touch point where our content's being promoted for the web to pick up on and then saves us money.
Right. I forgot about our Substack. Excellent. Um, and then we started cold calling people kind of and being like, hey, we exist. And we would love to partner with you. Can we be on your podcast to share our story or whatever? So we were on the APA People Behind the Plans. We were very special People Behind the Podcasts episode. And now we are also working with Plan Edison. We already have to read books. Plan Edison needs book review content. So it was a really great match. So the Wednesday after every episode, the Thursday, the Monday after every episode. Stephanie keeps my schedule very tidy for me. We're a good partnership. We have a book review that publishes on Plan Edison, and Plan Edison was kind enough to let us put out our booked on planning summary, who we are, and support under our own name instead of under Plan Edison. So we are a contributing author there. But all of this to say, we do all of these things, but we do them consistently. So our podcast comes out every other Tuesday, all of the time. We have not missed an every other Tuesday. We have recorded on a Friday and flipped a podcast to get it out and scheduled on Tuesday at 5 a.m. We do not mess up our podcast schedule. Our newsletter goes out once a month. You can expect it that day. What day is it, Steph? What day does our newsletter go out?
The first Tuesday, since the second and third are podcast episodes.
Exactly. And it goes out and you can expect it and it will be in your inbox and we do not miss it. We do not miss our Plan Edison book reviews. Those go out as scheduled. And it is hard sometimes, but the consistency is what matters. I listen to a podcast that's been around for a long time and they have a very dedicated listenership at this point, but now you have no idea when that podcast is going to drop into your, for me, into Apple Podcasts. Like every now and then it's just like, oh, look, if books could kill, put out an episode. Great. But I no longer rely on them for any kind of entertainment or anything like that because I don't know. Our consistency is what grows our podcast. So that's very important.
I am impressed. I have to admit, I was not consistent with putting out my podcast episodes, and I am not consistent with sending out the interest group newsletter, but now I am inspired to do better.
It's it's challenging. I understand, especially when so Stephanie and I are both full-time planners. We work a 40-hour a week job. This is a passion project for us. If something's going to give, you want it to be the podcast, right? Because well, it can't be work and it can't be our families and it can't be whatever, so it could be the
Mhm.
podcast, but
Mhm.
instead if you want to grow it, you have to keep at it.
Yes. Excellent points. So, we have just a few minutes left. I had one slide I put together with some different ideas for use cases. Um, obviously, booked on planning is an interview style show, and you are sharing information about the books. There's other ways that you can use a podcast. So I put a few ideas here. But I wanted to go ahead and open it up to the participants to see if there's any questions, comments, what have you, before, I keep talking. No questions. Everyone's an expert in podcasting now. I expect everyone. Okay, there's Kara. I see you raising your hand.
Yeah, my question is, in podcasts that you like or think are successful, what stands out to you? Because like good speakers and good information does not always equal an interesting podcast for the masses.
I guess personally for me, I really like the storytelling type of podcast, like a 99% Invisible episode where they have a little bit of Q&A, they have some narrated pieces and they're putting it all together, but that is an immense amount of time to edit something like that and produce, hence why they're all full-time podcasters. So you kind of have to balance if it's a passion project versus something that you're going to make it really interesting that's going to have an audience the scale of something like a 99% Invisible.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the passion of the hosts too. So I listen to Ologies, shout out for a science project, and Allie Ward is the most excited person you will ever have listening in your ears. Like every topic that she has is like her favorite topic. And yes, they're putting out a lot of useful information as well, but the fact that she's excited about it makes you excited about it. I think that's one of the strengths that Stephanie and I have for our podcast too, is like we are excited, curious people. I hate a podcast where it's like, here is some information, but the topic is delivered like this, and it's clear that no one really cared all that much about the topic. Like that just annoys me. So I think it's the passion of the hosts as well that make putting out information better.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. There, like, I could, depending on who the host is, I could almost listen to anything. I'll be like, yeah, Excel formulas, cool, exciting, whatever
Yeah.
it is, if it's a good host. Okay, we have another question in the chat from Kara with the C, about how podcasting can be used more for storytelling and engagement, and I can respond to that a bit. So. I've done at a few of the APA conferences, I've done a pop-up podcast. And I just use my phone and I have little DJI mics that I use for that. You don't even have to do that. And I had little cards with questions on them, like if your city was a musical, what would it be about? Or, if your city had a dating profile, what would it say? I had little fun questions like that, it's not going to take someone a long time to think of an answer to that. And I just recorded these little 20, 30-second clips with people. That was at an APA conference, but I could see doing something like that with your community members. Like if you have an event, if you're doing some workshop or you're doing a pop-up event at a farmer's market, what have you, you could easily do a little pop-up podcast with it and do fun little engaging questions like that. That's one idea. I don't know, Jennifer, Stephanie, or maybe other people on the call have ideas too.
Yeah, while we wait for someone else, I can say the city of Omaha, Nebraska, their clerk has a follow-up podcast. So after every city council meeting, they have a podcast that summarizes what happened at that city council meeting, and they are very good at storytelling. So you could see where that would be very dry, I guess, but it's not because she's very good at telling the story of what happened at council. And then it's a really easy way for everyone to just kind of pop in and figure out. It's about 10 minutes long.
Yeah. All right. We're actually at our time now. So if there's nothing else, no other questions or last minute comments, we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. And I have both of our websites on the screen. Please give Booked on Planning a follow. And please join our interest group if you're not already a member. Thank you so much, Jennifer, Stephanie. Thank you so much for imparting all of your wisdom on us. And thank you all for joining. Have a good
Thank
rest of your
you.
Yeah,
day.
thanks.
All right. Bye.